For this video, I will be discussing the meaning of life, or at least a meaning to life, that is taken by the anagram of the sentence, the meaning of life. Now, an anagram is when you take letters in a word or just a grouping of letters and rearrange them to make something different. A very simple anagram would be the word rat, and then backwards is tar. So when you take this sentence or phrase, the meaning of life, and scramble the letters around, you get two other very jarring phrases. The first one is the fine game of nil, and the second one is the engine of a film. So we'll start with the fine game of nil. Now it's N-I-L. And for the sake of this argument, I'm going to assume that nil is an abbreviation for nihilism, which is essentially the thought that you are pointless and worthless. Now, although that could be true just because you're looking at it from this perspective of, well, I'm just one being and my power over the universe is about the same as my power over the government, which is typically none. You can actually look it up. It's like a 1/1000th of a percent is the average person's political poll. And that can be pretty daunting to just say, oh no, I'm left alone here and I have no control. I am just the taker of commands, not the giver of commands. But this is an illusion, because even when you're given two options, option A could be something you absolutely want to do, option B could be something you don't want to do. You're still choosing, which gives you power over your own life. Now yes, some of the decisions you make may unfortunately be things that you don't truly support or actually want, but you were able to choose the lesser of two evils, or the greater of two evils, or the one with the shortest return, but the most vibrance in a moment. For example, a lot of people will, even scholars, fall under this lesser activities. For example, if you have a test coming up, hello gerbil, this is my cat. If you have a test coming up and your options are study or go party, well, of course the option to study would be more beneficial to you in the long run, but it's not going to be as fun for you in the moment as going out and partying would. And even scholars, he's here to stay, I guess, even scholars fall into these, or the people that pride themselves on being the best. When Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, sat under the Bodhi tree for 40 days, he came back and talked about the middle path, which is saying that you are not to do too much and you are not to do too little, because these are extremes that can pull you out of the zone that you're supposed to be in, which is absorbing the world and being a part of everything. And if you're too busy saying, oh, I'm insignificant, I don't do anything, and not actually taking the time to rationally look at all of the decisions you could make, it just completely blindsides you and takes you away from the potential of living a much more open and unattached life. Now, I'm not saying that being unattached is the ultimate goal, because we have language specifically designed to attach us to things, to give us emotions, to say, look at that, the tree is green and I feel happy. Which we wouldn't get to do if we weren't attached to objects and ourselves, creating this relative idea between us and them. Now the second line is the engine of a film. And if you think about it, it's a very, very true statement, which is what you are. Because as far as it goes, you are a pair of eyes. So in this world that you live, you are the camera. You get to see things. But you also interact with the world around you. So you're a director because you're moving things. But through the interaction, you're also a prop and an actor and the audience because you're watching it. And you move the world and change things, making you literally the engine of a film. You are the creator of the movie life. And this brings me to a short story that was originally posted on one of those high deal websites in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s. It's called The Egg. If you've never seen it before, I highly recommend watching it. It's very insightful. I'll give you a brief summary of it, but reading it is a very different process from just hearing me talk about it. So, in the story The Egg, there is this man who gets in a car accident and passes away. When he wakes up, he's in this white room, wearing white clothes on a white chair. Everything just seems vast, endless, and blank. And he sees this woman standing there, and he says, "Excuse me, what's going on?" And she says, "Oh, well," and then she says his name, and says, "You've died." And he says, "Oh my gosh, what happened to my wife and my daughter?" And this woman talking to him says, "I'm glad you asked that. They're okay, they had some minor injuries, but were able to walk away unscathed and ultimately okay. Unfortunately, you did pass away in the car accident." So the man says, "What is this, limbo? Am I in heaven? Am I in hell?" And the woman talking to him says, "Well, yes, all of them are correct." And she goes on to say that every life that's ever been lived is basically like a television screen in the movie The Matrix, where Neo is learning how to do karate super fast, so he sits down in the chair and watches it. And she says that life is basically a much more interactive version of that scene, where this man, or really all of us, have lived through every single body of every person in every time. So she says after they're done with this conversation, he's going back to be a young girl in China in the 1400s. And that the whole reason we're going through this ordeal of living life is because we're growing up to become a god. That we are an egg, and that's what the universe is. It's just this development of progress. And that's where the story ends. Now, my take on this is, if the world kind of is a simulation and it's for us to learn, then there definitely has to be a point. And since every religion kind of has this undertone that says everything is in perfect order, one, and two, the other point that just about every religion argues is that if you were someone else, it is your duty to do unto them what they would want if you were them. And these two things put together lead me to the conclusion that if the world is a simulation, as everyone does like to argue, that the point of the simulation is to learn how to love yourself and everyone else. And anything else that you're focused on is just background noise, because it's your job to appropriately love yourself, everyone else, every creature, and everything you've ever seen. And even the things you've never seen. So, with us living this concept that we are virtually nothing, we have no importance over the universe, but yet we're also the ones that see it and interact with it, it puts us in this unique situation where we can say, okay, everything's okay. The world won't burn down, meteors won't come flying out of the sky if I do this thing with my life. I have this ability to change what I want, and that is incredibly freeing. And that gives you the choice to act how you want. Granted, you're not always going to truly act the way you want, but as another point the Buddha had made, it's that everything is suffering. Even when you get your way, you're still suffering. Now, granted, in the moment, you may not have the initial, darn, that's not what I wanted, I feel horrible about myself, but it'll come eventually, because there is no permanence. Everything's constantly changing. The world is moving, growing into new forms, recreating ideas. So eventually you will still have that heartbreak. And it is important to not act unattached for the sake of not being a part of anything, but unattached to not suffer. And it's through understanding that we are this engine of a film for the meaning of life that we can operate freely and openly and care about each other. In closing, I'll leave you with this. The world is my home, and every creature in it is my family. I love all of you.